My ex-wife was pregnant with my child, but refused to let me touch her belly. So I gave her an ultimatum, and then she revealed a dark secret that changed everything. From the moment Sarah told me she was pregnant, I felt like I was walking on air. After years of trying and all the fertility treatments, it was finally happening. I was going to be a dad. I spent every waking moment dreaming about our future, midnight feedings, teaching our kid to ride a bike, reading bedtime stories. It was all I could think about. But as the weeks passed, I started noticing something strange. Whenever I'd try to touch her belly, just to feel a kick or a flutter, Sarah would pull away. At first, I thought it was just her being cautious. After all, she was a first-time mom, and I knew pregnancy could be overwhelming. But as her belly grew, so did the distance between us. One night, we were sitting on the couch watching TV. Sarah was wearing one of those loose, flowing dresses that made her look like a goddess, her belly softly rounded beneath the fabric. I reached out, wanting to feel the life we'd created together. She flinched, shifting away, her face tight with discomfort. "What's wrong?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "Does it hurt when I touch you?" "No, it's just, I don't feel like being touched right now," she replied, her eyes glued to the screen. "But it's our baby," I said, trying to hide the hurt in my voice. "I just want to feel a kick or something." She sighed, turning to face me, her eyes hard. "It's my body, okay? I don't like being touched right now. Can you just respect that?" I sat back, stunned by her tone. "Of course, I'll respect that. But, Sarah, you've been pushing me away for weeks. I just want to be part of this. I want to connect with our baby." She rolled her eyes, getting up from the couch. "Not everything is about you, you know. I'm the one carrying this baby, not you." I watched as she left the room, my heart sinking. This wasn't how I imagined pregnancy would be. I thought we'd be closer than ever, sharing every moment, every milestone. Instead, it felt like she was putting up walls, shutting me out of an experience that was supposed to be ours. Maybe I was overreacting, I thought. Pregnancy hormones were a thing, right? And she'd been under a lot of stress with work and the baby coming. I tried to brush it off, telling myself that things would get better once the baby was born. But the more she pulled away, the more my suspicions grew. A few days later, I came home early from work, hoping to surprise her. I had stopped by her favorite bakery and picked up some pastries, thinking we could spend some time together, just the two of us. As I walked into the house, I heard her voice coming from the living room. She was on the phone, speaking in hushed tones. "I can't keep doing this," she was saying, her voice strained. "He's asking too many questions. I don't know how much longer I can keep this up." I froze, my heart pounding. Who was she talking to? What couldn't she keep up? I stood in the hallway, straining to hear. But her voice dropped even lower, and I couldn't make out the words. A few moments later, she hung up, and I heard her footsteps approaching. I quickly moved to the kitchen, trying to act casual as I unpacked the pastries. Sarah walked in, looking startled to see me. "Oh, you're home early," she said, her smile a little too forced. "Yeah, I thought we could have a treat," I said, holding up the bag. "You know, just relax and spend some time together." "That's sweet," she said, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes, guilt, fear, before she turned away. "I'm actually feeling really tired. I might just go lie down." "Sarah," I said, my voice coming out more sharply than I intended. "What's going on? Who were you talking to just now?" Her back stiffened, and she turned to face me, her expression guarded. "Just a friend from work." "Why?" "You said something about not being able to keep this up," I said, watching her closely. "What did you mean by that?" She hesitated, her eyes flicking away from mine. "It's nothing. Just work stuff. You know how stressful things have been lately." But I didn't know, because she never told me. And the more she avoided my questions, the more my unease grew. I decided then and there that I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I needed answers, and I was going to get them, one way or another. Over the next few days, I tried to pay closer attention to her. I noticed the way she always kept her phone close, the way she'd leave the room to take calls, her hushed conversations behind closed doors. Every time I brought up the baby or tried to talk about the future, she'd change the subject or find some excuse to leave. It was driving me crazy. I felt like a stranger in my own home, locked out of the most important event of my life. I needed to know what was going on, why she was pushing me away. And if she wasn't going to tell me, I'd have to force her hand. One evening, after another tense, silent dinner, I finally snapped. "Sarah, we need to talk," I said, my voice firm. She looked up from her plate, her eyes wary. "About what?" "About us. About this baby. About why you've been shutting me out," I said, my voice rising. "I can't do this anymore, Sarah. I need to know what's going on. Why won't you let me be a part of this?" She set down her fork, her expression hardening. "I've told you I just need space. Why can't you respect that?" "Space? You're acting like I'm some stranger," I shot back. "We're supposed to be in this together, but it feels like you don't even want me around. What are you hiding from me, Sarah?" Her face went pale, and for a moment, I thought she might actually tell me the truth. But then she shook her head, her eyes narrowing. "I'm not hiding anything. You're just being paranoid." "No," I said, slamming my hand on the table. "I'm not paranoid. I'm your husband, and I deserve to know what's going on. Either you start being honest with me, or—" I hesitated, the words catching in my throat, "or I don't know if I can do this anymore." Silence filled the room, heavy and suffocating. Sarah stared at me, her eyes wide with shock. For a moment, neither of us spoke, the ultimatum hanging between us like a dark cloud. Then, finally, she took a deep breath, her voice trembling. "You're right. You deserve to know the truth. But I don't think you're going to like it." My heart pounded in my chest as I waited, bracing myself for whatever she was about to say. I had no idea how much her next words would change everything. The room felt unnaturally quiet after Sarah's words, as if the whole world was holding its breath, waiting. My mind was racing, trying to anticipate what she was going to say, but I couldn't prepare myself for the bombshell she was about to drop. Sarah took a shaky breath, her hands trembling as she gripped the edge of the table. "The baby isn't yours," she said, her voice barely a whisper. For a moment, I just stared at her, my brain refusing to process the words. "What do you mean?" I finally managed to say, my voice cracking. "Of course the baby is mine. We've been trying for years." She shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, but I had an affair." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. The air rushed out of my lungs, and I had to grip the back of the chair to keep myself from falling. "An affair?" I repeated numbly. "With who?" Sarah looked away, her face crumpling. "It doesn't matter. What matters is that the baby isn't yours. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to hurt you." "You didn't want to hurt me?" I shouted, my voice raw with disbelief and anger. "Sarah, you've been lying to me this whole time. You let me believe this was our baby, that we were going to start a family together, and now you tell me it's all a lie." Tears streamed down her face, but I felt no sympathy, only a growing rage. How could she do this to me? To us? After everything we'd been through, the years of trying, the disappointment, the hope. She'd taken all of that and turned it into a nightmare. "I wanted to tell you," she sobbed, her voice breaking, "but I was scared. I didn't want to lose you. I thought, maybe we could make it work, even if the baby wasn't yours. I thought you'd never find out." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My hands were shaking, and I felt like I might explode from the sheer intensity of my emotions. "Who is it, Sarah?" I demanded, my voice cold. "Who's the father?" She hesitated, and in that moment, I saw the guilt written all over her face. She knew that telling me would make things even worse, but I didn't care. I needed to know. I needed to know who had betrayed me. "Jason," she finally whispered, her voice trembling. "It's Jason." My mind reeled. Jason, my best friend, the man I'd known since college, who had been with me through thick and thin, the man I trusted more than anyone, the man I'd invited into my home, my life, the man who had slept with my wife. My knees went weak, and I sank into a chair, my head in my hands. I felt like the world was collapsing around me, everything I'd believed in falling to pieces. My wife, my best friend, two people I'd trusted implicitly, had betrayed me in the worst possible way. "How long?" I asked, my voice hollow. "How long has this been going on?" "A few months," she said quietly. "It started when we had that fight about the fertility treatments. You were so stressed, and I just needed someone to talk to. One thing led to another, and—" She trailed off, but I didn't need her to finish. I could imagine how it had gone down. Late-night conversations, shared frustrations, a moment of weakness that turned into something more. And all the while, I'd been oblivious, too caught up in my own hopes and fears to see what was happening right in front of me. "I can't believe this," I muttered, my voice shaking. "I trusted you, Sarah. I loved you. And this is how you repay me?" "I'm so sorry," she whispered, reaching out to touch my arm, but I pulled away, not wanting her anywhere near me. "Sorry doesn't cut it," I snapped, standing up. "You've ruined everything. Our marriage, our future, everything. Please, don't say that," she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "We can fix this. We can go to counseling, start over. I'll do anything. Just don't leave me." I looked at her, the woman I'd once thought I'd spend my life with, and all I felt was a cold, empty space where my love had been. "How can I stay?" I said, my voice hollow. "How can I ever trust you again? You lied to me, cheated on me, and now you're having another man's baby. There's nothing left to fix." I turned and walked out of the room, my mind spinning. I needed to get out of there, to clear my head, to figure out what to do next. As I stepped outside, the cool night air hit my face, and I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of emotions inside me. I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking, and dialed Jason's number. He picked up on the second ring, his voice cheerful. "Hey, man, what's up?" "Jason, we need to talk," I said, my voice strained. "Sure, what's going on?" "Sarah just told me everything," I said, my voice breaking. "About the affair, about the baby." There was a long pause, and then Jason's voice came back, quieter, filled with guilt. "Look, I'm so sorry, man. I never meant for this to happen. It just did." "Just happened?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You slept with my wife, Jason. My wife. And now she's pregnant with your child. How the hell did you think this was going to end?" "I don't know," he said, his voice trembling. "I screwed up, okay? I know that. I wish I could take it back, but I can't. All I can do is try to make it right." "Make it right?" I laughed bitterly. "There's no making this right. You've destroyed everything. I don't even know who you are anymore. Please, let's just meet up and talk about this," Jason pleaded. "I want to explain, to make you understand." "I don't want to understand," I snapped. "I want nothing to do with you. As far as I'm concerned, you're dead to me. Both of you." I hung up, my hand shaking, and sank onto the front steps, my head in my hands. Everything I'd known, everything I'd believed in, had been ripped away in an instant. My wife, my best friend, my future. It was all gone. For a long time, I sat there, staring into the darkness, trying to make sense of it all. I knew I had to figure out my next move, but right now, all I wanted to do was escape, to run away from the pain, the betrayal, the shattered pieces of my life. But no matter how far I ran, I knew the truth would follow me, and there was no escaping the reality that my world had changed forever. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, images flashed in my mind. Sarah with Jason, laughing together, touching, sharing secrets, a life that had nothing to do with me. I kept hearing her voice, those 3 words echoing over and over. The baby isn't yours. My stomach twisted with nausea, and my chest felt like it was being squeezed by a vice. By morning, I had made up my mind. I couldn't stay in that house, surrounded by memories that now felt like lies. I packed a bag, stuffing clothes into a duffel, my hands shaking so badly I could barely zip it up. I needed to get out, to clear my head, to figure out what the hell I was going to do. Sarah was asleep in our bed, her face tear-streaked and pale. For a moment, I just stood there, watching her. I wanted to feel something, anger, hate, love, anything, but all I felt was numb. She looked so fragile, so broken, and for a brief second, I wanted to hold her, to tell her everything would be okay. But then I remembered the betrayal, the lies, and the image shattered. I scribbled a quick note, my hand shaking, and left it on the kitchen counter. I need some time. Don't call me. I grabbed my bag and walked out, closing the door softly behind me. I drove aimlessly for hours, my thoughts a chaotic mess. I couldn't go to any of my friends. They were mostly mutual, and I didn't want to deal with explaining why I was suddenly homeless. My parents lived too far away, and the last thing I needed was a lecture about responsibility. I ended up in front of a cheap motel, the kind that rented rooms by the hour, and checked in, paying cash. The room was small and dingy, the bed lumpy, but it was better than being at home. I collapsed onto the bed, staring up at the ceiling, my mind spinning. How had everything gone so wrong? One minute, I was planning for a future with my wife and child. In the next, I was alone in a motel room, my life in shambles. The betrayal cut deep, sharper than any knife. Sarah, my wife. Jason, my best friend. I trusted them both with my life, and they destroyed me. I tried to distract myself, turning on the TV, flipping through channels, but nothing held my attention. My mind kept drifting back to them, to what they had done, to the baby that wasn't mine. I felt sick to my stomach, the anger bubbling up, hot and fierce. I wanted to hit something, to scream, to make them feel the pain they'd caused me. But I was too tired, too drained, and all I could do was lie there, staring blankly at the flickering screen. The next few days passed in a blur. I went through the motions, eating when I remembered, sleeping in fits and starts. I couldn't stop thinking about Sarah, about the life we'd built together, the dreams we'd shared. How could she throw it all away? How could she betray me like that? On the 3rd day, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, my heart skipping a beat when I saw Jason's name. I wanted to throw the phone across the room, to scream at him, to make him feel the rage that was tearing me apart. But instead, I just stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the answer button. Finally, I took a deep breath and pressed accept. What do you want? I snapped, my voice cold. Can we meet? Jason's voice was quiet, hesitant. I just want to talk. Please. I wanted to say no, to tell him to go to hell, but some part of me needed answers, needed to understand. Fine, I said. There's a park near the motel. I'll text you the address. I hung up before he could respond, my hands shaking. I didn't want to see him, didn't want to face the man who had destroyed my life. But I had to know why. I had to hear it from him, to understand how the man I'd called my best friend could do this to me. The park was empty when I arrived, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the grass. I sat on a bench, my mind racing, trying to prepare for what was about to happen. I didn't know what I would say, how I would react, but I knew I needed to stay calm, to keep control. I heard footsteps behind me, and then Jason was there, standing awkwardly a few feet away, his hands stuffed in his pockets. He looked different, thinner, his hair unkempt, his eyes shadowed with guilt and exhaustion. For a moment, we just stared at each other, the silence stretching between us, heavy with unspoken words. "Thanks for meeting me," Jason said finally, his voice hoarse. "I wasn't sure if you'd come." "I almost didn't," I admitted, my voice cold. "But I need to understand, Jason. I need to know why. Why did you do it?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair, his shoulders slumping. "I wish I had a good answer," he said. "I really do. But I don't. It just happened. Sarah and I were both feeling lost, and we turned to each other. It was a mistake, a huge mistake, and I'm so sorry." "Sorry?" I laughed bitterly. "You're sorry? That's supposed to make this better? You slept with my wife, Jason. You betrayed me. You lied to me." "I know," he said, his voice breaking, "and I hate myself for it. I hate what I've done to you, to our friendship. If I could take it back, I would. But I can't. All I can do is apologize and hope you can forgive me." "Forgive you?" I repeated, my anger boiling over. "How can I forgive you for destroying my life? You were my best friend. You were supposed to have my back, and you stabbed me in it instead. You've ruined everything, Jason. Everything." "I know," he said quietly, his eyes filled with pain. "And I'll regret it for the rest of my life. But I still care about you, man. You're like a brother to me, and it kills me to know I've lost that." "Brother?" I spat, my voice shaking with rage. "You don't get to call me that. Brothers don't do what you did. You're nothing to me now." He flinched, his face crumpling, but I didn't care. I needed him to feel the pain he'd caused me, needed him to understand the depth of his betrayal. "You and Sarah," I continued, my voice icy. "Do you love her? Is that what this is about?" Jason looked away, his jaw clenched. "No," he said finally. "It wasn't about love. It was, I don't know what it was. A mistake. A terrible, unforgivable mistake." I shook my head, disgusted. "Well, congratulations. You got what you wanted. A baby. A family. I hope it was worth it." "It wasn't," he said, his voice hollow. "Nothing about this was worth it. I've lost everything, my friend, my life. I don't even know who I am anymore." For a moment, I felt a flicker of pity, but I pushed it away. I couldn't afford to feel sorry for him, not when he'd taken so much from me. "Good," I said coldly. "You don't deserve to know. You don't deserve anything." I stood up, my hands clenched into fists, my whole body trembling with anger and grief. "Stay away from me, Jason," I said, "and stay away from Sarah. I don't want to see either of you ever again." He nodded, his shoulders slumping, defeat written all over his face. "I understand," he said quietly, "and I'm sorry. For everything." I turned and walked away, my heart pounding, tears stinging my eyes. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The life I'd known was over, shattered by betrayal, and all I could do now was try to pick up the pieces and figure out how to move on. But as I walked away, the weight of what I'd lost settled over me, and I knew that no matter how hard I tried, nothing would ever be the same again. In the days that followed, I tried to figure out how to put my life back together. Staying at the motel felt like prolonging the inevitable, but I couldn't go back to the house. It was filled with too many memories of a life that didn't exist anymore. So I rented a small apartment on the other side of town, a place that was as empty and barren as I felt. It was just four walls and a roof, but it was mine, uncontaminated by lies and betrayal. The first few nights in the new place, I barely slept. My mind wouldn't shut off, replaying everything over and over, like a broken record. Sarah's face when she told me the truth, Jason's voice cracking with guilt. I kept seeing their faces, hearing their voices, and I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how it had all gone so wrong. Sarah called every day, but I ignored her. Her texts piled up, unread. I couldn't bring myself to face her, not yet. The pain was still too raw, too deep. I needed time, space, anything to clear my head. But no matter how much distance I put between us, I couldn't escape the feeling of betrayal. It clung to me, a shadow I couldn't shake. Then, one evening, there was a knock at my door. My heart jumped into my throat, and for a second, I thought it might be Sarah. I wasn't ready to see her. I wasn't sure I'd ever be ready. But when I opened the door, it wasn't Sarah standing there. It was Jason's wife, Emily. She looked as bad as I felt. Her eyes red and puffy, her hair a mess. She gave me a weak smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I hesitated, then stepped aside, letting her in. She walked into the living room, glancing around at the sparse furniture, the boxes still unpacked. "I heard about what happened," she said, sitting down on the edge of the couch. "Jason told me everything." I nodded, leaning against the wall, not trusting myself to speak. What could I say? That I was sorry? That I wished things were different? The words felt hollow, meaningless. Emily took a deep breath, her hands twisting in her lap. "I've been trying to make sense of it," she said, "trying to understand why they did it. But I can't. All I can feel is this anger, this betrayal. I don't know how to get past it." "I don't think there is a way past it," I said quietly. "I've been trying to figure that out myself. But the more I think about it, the more lost I feel." She nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "I never thought this would happen to us. Jason and we've had our problems, but I never thought he'd do something like this. I thought we were stronger than that. I thought the same about Sarah and me," I said, my voice bitter. "I thought we had something real, but I guess I was wrong." Emily looked at me, her eyes searching. "What are you going to do?" I shrugged, feeling the weight of the question. "I don't know. I can't stay with her. I can't raise another man's child. But walking away feels wrong too. Like I'm giving up." "You're not giving up," she said, her voice firm. "You're protecting yourself. Sometimes, walking away is the only choice you have." I nodded, knowing she was right. But it didn't make it any easier. I'd spent years building a life with Sarah, dreaming of a future that was now gone. Letting go of that dream felt like cutting out a part of myself. Emily stood up, wiping her eyes. "If you ever need to talk, you know where to find me," she said. "We're both going through this. Maybe it'll help if we go through it together." I managed a small smile. "Thanks, Emily. I appreciate it." She nodded, and after a moment's hesitation, she pulled me into a hug. I hugged her back, feeling the comfort of another person's touch, the reassurance that I wasn't completely alone. When she left, the apartment felt a little less empty, a little less cold. Over the next few weeks, I tried to move forward. I focused on work, burying myself in projects, trying to keep my mind occupied. I avoided the places where Sarah and I used to go, the coffee shop where we had our first date, the park where we talked about our future. Everywhere I looked, there were memories of a life I couldn't have, and it hurt too much to face them. One evening, after a long day at work, I came home to find a letter in my mailbox. The handwriting was familiar, and my heart sank as I opened it. "Please, just hear me out. I know I've hurt you, and I don't expect you to forgive me. But I can't live with myself if I don't try to make things right. Meet me at the cafe tomorrow at 5 p.m. I'll be there, waiting. It was signed with a single word, Sarah. I crumpled the letter in my hand, my mind racing. I didn't want to see her. I didn't want to hear her apologies, her excuses. But a part of me, the part that still loved her despite everything, wanted answers, wanted closure. I needed to understand how we had gotten here, how the woman I loved could betray me so completely. The next day, I found myself standing outside the cafe, my heart pounding. Through the window, I could see Sarah sitting at a corner table, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee, her eyes downcast. She looked up as I entered, her face lighting up with hope, and for a moment, I almost turned around and walked out. But I took a deep breath and walked over, sitting down across from her. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice soft. I nodded, my jaw clenched, not trusting myself to speak. She took a deep breath, her eyes filling with tears. "I don't know where to start," she said. "I've made such a mess of everything. I've hurt you, and I've hurt myself, and I don't know how to fix it." "Why did you do it?" I asked, my voice cold. "Why Jason? Why any of it?" She wiped her eyes, her hands shaking. "I don't know," she said, her voice breaking. "I was scared. I felt like I was losing you. The pressure of trying to get pregnant, the treatments, everything. It was too much. And Jason was there. He understood. He was going through the same thing with Emily, and we just connected." "That doesn't excuse what you did," I said, my anger simmering. "You didn't just have an affair, Sarah. You lied to me. You let me believe this baby was mine." "I know," she said, her voice pleading, "and I'm so sorry. I should have told you the truth from the beginning, but I was terrified. I didn't want to lose you. I didn't want to face what I'd done. And when I found out I was pregnant, I panicked. I thought maybe we could still make it work. But it's not our baby," I said, my voice breaking. "It's Jason's. How could you expect me to raise his child, to pretend everything is fine?" She looked down, tears streaming down her face. "I know it's too much to ask," she said quietly, "and I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I still love you. I always have. And I want to try to make things right. I want us to be a family." I stared at her, my mind reeling. A family. The word felt like a knife in my chest. I had dreamed of a family with Sarah, a life filled with love and happiness. But that dream was shattered, replaced by a reality I couldn't accept. "I can't," I said, my voice choked. "I can't pretend this didn't happen. I can't live a lie." "Please," she whispered, her eyes desperate. "Just give me a chance. We can go to counseling. We can work through this. I'll do whatever it takes. Just don't leave me." I shook my head, feeling the weight of my decision. "I'm sorry, Sarah," I said, my voice firm, "but I can't do this. I can't forgive you. And I can't be a father to a child that isn't mine." She sobbed, covering her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. I stood up, feeling a hollow emptiness inside me, a sense of loss that went beyond words. I had loved her, and she had destroyed that love. There was no going back. I turned and walked out of the cafe, the door closing behind me, the sound echoing in the quiet. The sun was setting, casting long shadows on the street, and I stood there, feeling the weight of my decision. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing. I had to move on. I had to find a way to heal, to rebuild my life, one step at a time. As I walked away, I felt a strange sense of peace, a calmness I hadn't felt in weeks. The pain was still there, the wound still fresh, but I knew I'd made the right choice. I had to let go of the past, of the betrayal, of the life that had been torn apart. It wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to try. After all, sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that set you free. Thank you for reading. Have you ever faced a betrayal that changed your life? How did you cope? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences.